Good evening, everyone.
Kavod Araf, how are you?
Oh, Hashem, thank you. Eh,
Power off.
So we're going to Gimel. Right, so here he writes the tour that Katab Achi Arabi Yechiel Shalti Ladoni Avi Orsa. So he says, my brother Rabbeinu Yechiel, he wrote that he asked his father, the Rosh, Im Yisaref Niftar B'Bracha Chorana. So the question is like this: the one who combines with the Zimun, and he didn't really have bread, right? He had something else. The question is, does he combine when it comes to the Birkat Hamazon? In other words, does that absolve him from what he ate? Or right? So, and the answer is, he says no. He answered him no. So what does that mean? He has to make his own final blessing for whatever he ate, and he's not included in the Birkat Hamazon, which was said by the other people there. After all, he didn't have a meal, he didn't have bread, he didn't really eat with them either. So, why should he combine with them? It doesn't make sense. So that's what he says. And it says with Yosef regarding that, והטעם נראה לי שהוא מדעסיקנא דברים באים לאחר הסעודה טעונים ברכה בנפלאים בין אחרים. So he says, he brings this thing that we covered a while ago. We talked about this, that when you're eating something at the end of the meal, like a dessert, so that does require to make a blessing on that, whether before or after. And even though nowadays we already said, right, that we don't do after, we rely on the Birkat Hamazon, but before we do we do less. But anyway, regarding that, right, he brings that as a support for this, that here also the same thing, that you would require to bless by yourself. שהמוציא ברכת המזון אין פותרין אלא שאוכלים בתוך עיקר הסעודה. Because המוציא ברכת המזון only absolves somebody who's coming to eat, right? The main soda, not the dessert. ואם התם שאכל פת בקבע כשסילק ידו, if there, that when he ate bread, as a meal, and then he removed he stopped eating the bread, in a pot, ve'achal perot, then he eat fruits. In bracha birkat hamazon v'tatan, the birkat hamazon doesn't absolve it. Shelo achal pat klal, he didn't eat bread at all the more so, right? Somebody like that. Kol sheken shelo tifsenu birkat hamazon. The birkat, all the more so, birkat hamazon will not absolve him. The Rashba, so it says the Rashba perk shlosha she'achlu over there in this perk. He says the Rashba, which is in Brachot Memchet Amud Aleph. Gam behad yaminan aval leotzi et rabim yedei chobatan. Regarding that which we said, right, to fulfill the obligation of the public, ad she'ochal kazait dagan, he has to eat kazait of bread. כתב אפשר שהמצטרף אינו יוצא ידי ברכתו. So it says, it's possible that the one who combines does not fulfill his obligation for his final blessing on their Birkat Hamazon, with their Birkat Hamazon. Only the zimun they combine. That's about it, right? When it comes to Birkat Hamazon, they don't combine. Because they didn't really eat together, a meal. That's the thing. So he says he has to make his own after blessing, right? Resembles the case of where one person went out to the marketplace, right? After eating, which was in Memhe Amud Bet. Shekorin lo. So we call him and we do zimun with him. And then he does the Birkat Hamazon by himself. About the Shimon ben Shetach, but he says this rabbi, that story is difficult for me. He says, right? So B'Shema Shimon ben Shetach ab bezol legarmeh hu de'avad. So he says it could be that this rabbi Shimon ben Shetach, he did this for himself. The Svirale, the Shalosh, Poter, Me'en Shalosh. That he holds that the Birkat Hamazon does absolve the Me'en Shalosh, right, which is the Al Mechya. Ve'en Ami Shani Yain. And it says, alternatively, you can say that wine is different. The Mezan Zayin, because it satiates. Ukinyan Shamru, Gabe Tamre, like they said regarding dates. Besopek Kama. Yeah, it nourishes whatever. Okay, so the afilu Amar Hazan etakol yatsa. So even if he said Hazan etakol, he did full obligation. The Tamre Nami Mezan Zane. Why? Because dates also do nourish. Okay. So then he goes on. The Rif says only the stir-fried only regarding combining with 10 people. But it says when it comes to 3 people, he doesn't combine unless he eats kazait of bread. Peg shlosha shachlu over there. Katav Aruch v'lo yadana manale v'kasher ledvarav. So I don't know where he got this from. Difficult says the El Beresh Pirkin. We already said at the beginning of the parak. Paskina hilchata kemor zutra. We pass like kemor zutra. The mechamir be'asara tefeh maybe shlosha. That he is machmir with 10 more than 3. And we can deflect and say ta'atam bainan eseba. There we required reclining. Tzarich sheyishvu asara. The people, 10 people sitting kechad together. Uvinyan achar. Otherwise, the Shekhinah doesn't dwell there. Aval hacha inyan shlosha, the inyan shlosha. But regarding here, the 3 people, shehem mu'atin, which is a small group, tzarich she'ochlu kulam. They have to eat. Everybody has to eat. Sugya de shmatin lo mashmachi, but it says our discussion here does not imply like that. The mashma de lo bainan she'ochal kazait dagan. That implies that we don't really need to eat kazait of bread. Ela leotzi et rabim, only for the public. Yedei chobatan, right? The one who's fulfilling the obligation of the public. V'chen katav Rabbeinu Yonah. That's what it says, Rabbeinu Yonah. Aval harashba katav b'divi arif. But the Rashba says from the words of the Rif, ita behedya בירושלמי, דפירקין, דגרסינא נתן, so he says you also have this, like the Rif in the Yerushalmi, that it says there, Rabbi Yaakov Baracha B'Shem Rabbi Yochanan, Leolam En Mezamin Ad Sheochal Kazek Dagan. So we don't do zimun until he ate some bread. V'ha Tanya, Shanaim Pat Ve'echad Yerek Mezamin. But didn't we say, right, two bread and one, right, one vegetable? We do zimun. Matnita de Rabban Shimon Gamliel he, right? So he says that Braita is the Rashbag. Perush de Amar B'Braita de Samuch. But he said, explaining that, he said in this Braita that's close by, Allah Be'eseh Mahem, and they reclined with them. Afilu lo tabal imahem ela pesir. Let's say he just ate a little bit vegetables. Lo achad imahem ela goget echad, or one kernel or whatever, or something. Mistarfin, they do combine. But the let hilchata k'Rabban Shimon Gamliel. So he says halacha is like that Rashbag. Rabbanan pligi ale, because rabbis argue with him. Velet hilchata k'vateh. אבל בתוספות אמרו אפילו לשלושה מצטרף. So they said even for three it does combine, Tosfot says. So it's a big machloket about this. Oh, interesting. Okay. Let's move on. וזה לשון תוספות, that's what it says in תוספות. יש שרוצים לומר, there are those who want to say, תנו דווקא לזימון 10, it's only with 10 people, אבל לשלושה, when it comes to 3, לא מצטרף אלא באכילת דגן, it has to be only grains. ומי הוא בירושלמי תנא, but in Yerushalmi, right, the teachers there, שניים שאכלו, but באחד ירק מזמין, there it says it does work with the one person with vegetables. וכן פסק רי, והשר מקוצי, also these rabbis pass נגד, מפורש, תהן הלכה כאותה ברייתא דירושלמי, they pass נגד, the halacha is not like the ברייתא דירושלמי, אחד שהרי מעסיק עלה התם, the one thing is that they argued with that over there, right? They objected, מתניתא דקרבן שמעון רשב"ג, כלומר, רבנן פליגי עלה, that is like Rashbag, but the rabbis argue with that. And we don't pass connect this, right, the individual against the public, the majority. The Incan Kashil, the Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yochanan, because also he says another thing is that you have a contradiction between two statements of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan de le'olam eno motzi ad she'ochal kazait. He doesn't feel obligation to eat kazait dagan bread. Ha mistaref shapir, but he says when it comes to combining, it does work. Afilu lo tam ela shatak yovda de Shimon ben Shetach, like the story of Shimon ben Shetach, he just drank there. Yerushalmi kamar Rabbi Yochanan le'olam en mezamin ad she'ochal kazait. And Yerushalmi it says, right, that we don't do zimun until you eat kazait. Umashma afilu mitzaref. That implies that even if you're just combining, ela shmamina tan be'asara v'Yerushalmi ayre bezimun shelosha. So it says here we're talking about 10 people, and then Yerushalmi is talking about 3 people. V'gam samad katav shelashon Yerushalmi Messiah le'arif. So he says that the language of Yerushalmi, right, does support the Rif. Because that Braita is like the Rashbag. But that we do combine like that. But the rabbis argue with that. Oh, so he says the custom is that we do combine, but he says the Rambam holds like the Rif. So he says since they hold like one opinion, the Rambam and the Rif, and also the Rashba agrees with them. Yerushalmi said, and also Yerushalmi supports that. So that's the custom. So that's the halacha. He says, "Katava kolbo be'efshar lomar." So says the kolbo, it's possible to say she'im achal tavshil shel daisa. It's possible to say that if he ate cooked dish of daisa, which is like porridge, or sharma sekadira, or some other type of right something cooked in a pot, some grains. יהיה נחשב כזית דגן, it will be considered like bread. אך הרמב"ם כתב בפירוש בשלושה צריך שאוכל כל אחד ואחד מהם כזית פת. But the Rambam says no, it has to be each one eating bread. כתוב שהרם היה נזהר כשהיה אוכל ואחר עמו. So it says, right, that it says in Haggaot that the Ram he was careful that when somebody was eating together with him, he wouldn't give a person right to drink at that point. A third person, unless he could tell him to wash his hands, to eat with them, in order to remove himself from a machloket, right? Because there's a big machloket here. So if it happened, right, that he gave a person to drink, but and didn't want to he didn't want to eat together with him kazait dagan, kazait of bread, but the gam lo matzah acher. He couldn't find anybody else sheochal imo they could eat with him. אז היה סומך על דברי התוספות. Then he would rely on תוספות, והיה מזמן על השותה, and he would do zimun on the one who drinks. ודבריו נכונים הם. He says, oh, they're correct. Wow. Oh boy. That's very interesting. So we'll see how the Shulchan Aruch concludes with this, because it's a little bit confusing. So that's only to combine, but when it comes to fulfilling the obligation of others, it has to be kazait of bread. That's the conclusion of the Gemara. In other words, what we're saying is that the one who makes the blessing, right, the Birkat Hamazon, he has to have eaten for sure bread. That's the conclusion of the Gemara. כתב הראש, אבל שתייה ועלה עלי ירק לא מהנה דמיינן אכילת דבר שראוי לומר עליו שלוש ברכות. So he says, but when it comes to just drinking, or eating some vegetables, that's not going to help you when it comes to this rule, right? There has to be something which you can do Birkat Hamazon. Shema Birkat Bracha Echad Men Shalosh Shapir Dame. Or even maybe even Allah Mechia can do the job. B'danakat Kazait Dagan, because he said Dagan, right, which is grains. But not Kazait Pad. He didn't say really bread. V'tama Kivan Deika Achila Beika Bracha Deoraita Shapir Dame. So he says the reason is because since we have eating and we have blessing, so from the Torah that's good enough. Adkan, that's the end of it. But from the Rambam, right? It says he holds that we need bread only, right? Not other grains, products, right? Whatever it may be. Zayt katan me'goz. So says the Rokach that if you have a olive which is smaller than a nut, a hazelnut, whatever, like it implies at the end of this parak, Shabbat Kuf Pei Aleph Amud Aleph. So he says, but it seems like we need like a big kazait. Right, question is, what kind of, in other words, when we say kazait, right, which means an olive size, which type of olive are we talking about? So he brought here two opinions, right? One is that even a small olive is good. Like those little tiny ones, we see, right, that they sell. There's basically three types of olives, you know. There's the tiny ones, there's the mid-sized ones, and then there's the large ones.
But we go by the mid-size, right? The
Yeah,
mid-size.
true. That's true. But here he's going through all the possibilities here, you know. So let's see what he says here. Katav, right? אבל נראה כזית גדול בעניין. So we need a large one. He says, "גדמין פרק כיצד מרכין כברבי יוחנן, אכל כזית מליח, וכן משמע בכתות." Right. So here, according to this opinion, apparently he requires a big one. So we'll see how he paskins in the Shulchan Aruch about all these things. A lot of interesting stuff here. So he says
Because
like
the spot will be like the size of a half an egg, so that will be the large one, right? The spot.
yeah, I think you're right. What you're saying is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, let's see what he says here. Yeah, it sounds right. המצטרף צריך לברך ברכה אחרונה. It says we said right that if he is combining with them, you know, together, right, to eat together and to make zimun, he has to make his own after blessing. He cannot rely on the Birkat Hamazon of the other people. Al ma she'achal, whatever he ate, ve'no niftar b'Birkat Hamazon. So he's not going to be absolved with Birkat Hamazon she'eru with these people. Remember when Moses said the saki b'chol machal, you can do any type of food. L'istaref le'asara, only if you're doing with 10 people, right? Combining with 10 people. About the gimel, but if you're doing with 3 people, eno mitzaref ad she'ochal kazait pat, right? So then it has to be bread. V'yeshomin, then we have the other opinion, right? That because the gun mehane, that even right, you know, grains is enough, mezonot, whatever. Uh, V'yeshomin, there's also another opinion, right? Which is the b'yek b'chol b'achal manner. Even like something, you know, some vegetable, right? Is enough. So therefore, he says, right, what do we do practically speaking? Since we have like 3 opinions going on here, says, what do we do with him? If we can tell him to eat bread, mutab, this is the better option, right? He doesn't want to eat bread. What can we do? He doesn't have time, right? So don't give him like some other food, you know? But if they gave him already, right? Or they gave him whatever, or some other food, right? So then they can do zimun. They can rely on the lenient opinion. Even though he doesn't want to eat bread. So this is the way Shulchan Aruch sets it up. Very interesting. So what we saw yesterday in the tour, right, was, you know, the opinion of the Rosh, you know, but here he paskins not really like the Rosh, you know, at least lechatchila, right? Not like that. So again, right, I'll go over this again. It's a little bit a little bit complicated. So if you want to combine, right, and you want to eat a kazite, you know, you can eat anything or drink anything, right, as we said, which has some nutritional value, right? But that's only with 10 people. When it comes to 3, so we have here 3 different opinions going on, you know. So the opinion of the Rif and the Rambam is that you have to have bread. So lechatchila, we try to do it that way, you know, if it's possible. If he doesn't want to do that, you know, the third guy who came in, then we don't give him nothing, you know, just leave him alone. Right? Let him go. But if they already gave him, right, and he ate, so then we should do zimun because, you know, we can rely on the lenient opinion. That's pretty much what he's saying here.
I'm sorry. So if it's 3 people,
Yeah.
you gotta give them bread for the nutritional value of the kasai. But then if someone else comes you don't have to give them
So
anything,
So what we're
right?
talking about here is that originally there was two guys, and then the third guy came at the end.
Yes. And
That's what we're talking about.
he does get it, right?
So we try to get him to eat bread, that's what they're saying, right? If he
Mhm.
doesn't want to do bread, don't give him nothing. And if they already gave him, so you can do zimun with him also.
Okay. But how about a fourth one? No.
Right. So number 4 is not really going to help you or hurt you because, you know, it's the same as 3. 3 and 4 is the same.
Okay. I get it. Thank you.
So in other words, if you already have 3 people who ate together, guy number 4 is just, he's not really crucial. We don't really need him here.
And how about if you get 10 people? Would that
Then if you
turn
have 10 people, there you mention the name of God,
Okay.
also. So it becomes a little bit different, right? So there, if we have 10 people, we said that they can have like a vegetable or a drink or something. That's good enough
Thank you.
to combine with them. Okay, fantastic. So that's that. Now he brings another interesting case. So yeah, so regarding what you said about the kazite, as we said, there's 3 types, and machloket between Rambam and Tosfot.
And the Rif and Rambam is the same. 1/3 of an
Yes, that's true. Yes, yes.
and
So
then the
right. Very good. So there is a place in the Shulchan Aruch where he goes like the Tosfot. So what does that mean? That he says if you didn't eat half an egg, you shouldn't make a blessing, after blessing, because there's a doubt about that. So it seems to paskin like Tosfot, but it could be, that over there the reason why he does that is because there's a concern about blessing in vain. But it could be that he really holds like the Rambam and the Rif, in general. But here, because of blessing in vain, it could be that's the reason why he goes like Tosfot. So, I mean, in general, the Sfaradim go like the Tosfot and the Rambam. So probably here as well, in this thing. But as we said, right, because of the blessing in vain, we're concerned about that. So we tell you, to do like Tosfot. But the truth is, that now I have to tell you something about this. That a few things you need to know about that. That these measures, when they were given in volume, not in weight. So the thing is that our eggs today are very small. So that means half an egg is like extremely small today, and 1/3 is like almost nothing. uh, so you're gonna if you eat, if you go by volume, you're not really gonna get much food there, and you still have to bless according to that. But most people today have the custom to go by weight. Because there are some poskim who say you should go by weight now. It could be one of the reasons is because these sizes they've shrunk, gotten smaller. That's the thing, So they say weight is the more accurate way to go.
like for
So
example, Rambam will be 19 grams, like 19, 20 grams compared to Tasfot,
right.
25.
So, yeah, Tosfot is going to be like 27.
27, yeah.
So yeah, it's a big difference. I mean, whatever. But anyway, the point is, that today, what I'm trying to say is that we usually eat, more than this. Like for us, the difference between a third and a half of an egg is like, it's not even significant because we usually eat at least a half. The truth is, we usually eat like at least an egg size when we eat. At least that much we eat. Uh, like your basic challah roll today, right? Your roll, bread, is like there's at least two eggs in there, if not more. So, or even like a sandwich, right? For sure, it has already like an egg size there. If you go according to volume, for sure. So therefore, that difference between Tosfot and Rambam today is not really so significant because usually we eat more than that anyway. It's very rare that a person eats less than that, especially if you go according to volume. So yeah, but yeah, we're gonna talk more about these things, by the way, later on. When we get to the laws of blessings, we're gonna go into that more. This is not the main place for this issue of kazait. The sizes. There are other places which talk about this more in detail. But at least we're getting a taste of it over here. And so here, what he was saying is basically he bought two sizes. The small and the large. Now it could be right that this guy who said small and large, he didn't really see all three of them. Maybe he saw only two of them. He didn't know that actually there was three types. So whatever. But the Shulchan Aruch doesn't even mention this here because it's not really the main place to talk about these sizes. There are different places that talk about this. Okay, whatever. So I'm not going to get into it right now so much, but anyway, as we said, right, when it comes to blessing, that it shouldn't be a blessing in vain. You should try to eat something significant, like as I told you guys, like on these short days in the winter when I'm eating Seudah Shlishit, third meal on Shabbat, I have like very little, like just to do the mitzvah, not even hungry at all. So the amount that I'm eating is definitely kazait, more than a kazait, but it's very little, so I can't imagine anybody eating less than that. Okay, whatever. Okay. The truth is, it's possible to say that even the big olive, right, the large ones, they're not really half an egg. They're like one third also. Just wanted to point that out, because they're not so big. Those big olives, they're not half an egg. They're like one third. That's what they really are. So according to what we see, like in the reality, the truth is, the Rif and the Rambam, they're right, and Tosfot is off. Unless his sizes in where he lived were different sizes he had. It's possible. Okay, whatever. It's all good. Anyway, so let's move on. So we'll go to Daled. But the truth is, if you had kazite at volume, you can rely on that. There's no problem. It doesn't have to be weight because the weight will always be more. It's going to always be like could be even double sometimes. Because when the sages decreed, they decreed in volume. They did not decree weight. So how do we get the weight? The Rambam did like a translation, like he transferred it. and he gave us like a reference to how to convert it. He converts it. So with that's what we use. We use a conversion ratio of the Rambam. That's how we figure out the weight. Okay, and also, it depends on the density of the food as well. Like different foods have different density. So that also can affect, the weight. A lot of things to talk about when it comes to that. So the weight is usually going to be off, it's not going to be accurate. One time, somebody asked my rabbi, Maran Ovadia Shalom. They asked him, they said, what about if you eat, you know, kazait of bamba? Do you have to bless on that? You guys know what's bamba?
No.
Oh, you guys, okay. Uh, for sure, you never lived in Israel because that's like the major snack over there, snack food in Israel, bamba. So, what is bamba? They have it also in America, by the way. I'm not sure if they have it in Middle America, but here in these areas, they do have it for sure. So, anyway, right, bamba is like a snack, Israeli snack, which is made out of puffed peanuts. I'm sorry, not peanuts. Yeah, there's peanut in there, but the main ingredient is corn. It's like puffed corn with peanut flavor, right? Something like that. It's pretty good, actually. Pretty good stuff. But anyway, right? That's the so the thing is that it's puffed, like with air. So it's like lots of air in there. It's like large, but it's like it's not dense. It's a lot of air. So that's why they asked the rabbi, like if you eat a kazait of that, meaning, in terms of the volume, are you going to bless, on right born nefashot, whatever, on this bamba? So you know what he told them? He says the sages never decreed you should bless on air. You have to bless on food. That was a good point there. You know what I mean? Since it's puffed up with air, it's not a realistic size. Because if you would grind it down, it would be like very much smaller. That's why you can't on foods like that, which are puffed. You can't really rely on the volume, because it's not an accurate rendition of the size of the actual food you're eating. So with things like that, with snack foods like that, it's better to go by weight because because you can't get a really like good reading, with the volume with these snack foods. It's hard to measure the volume. Okay, so let's go to Dalit. So it says Katab Bahag, right? It says the Bahag, Shemishi Achal Kazait Dagan Eno Mutzi. It says, right, that whoever ate a kazait of Dagan, right? So yeah, we gotta see this inside the tour. Some more stuff here. Yeah, so it says like this: if he ate a kazait of grains, eno motzi ela otam shachlu shiur derabanan. He only can fulfill the obligation of somebody who ate a rabbinical right to measure. Okay, yeah, this is important. This issue here. אבל לא אותם שאכלו כדי שביעה, but not the ones who ate enough to be satiated, right? ורי פירש שמוציא אפילו אותם שאכלו כדי שביעה. But the Ri says no, right? You can even fulfill the obligation of somebody who was satiated. ומי הוא מצווה מן המובחר, אם יודעים כולן, levarech. But he says the proper way to do it is if they all know how to bless. Oto she'achal kadesh svia, the one who ate right to satiation. Im enan yudin kulan levarech. If they don't all know how to bless, mi she'achal kazait yachol yotzi af otam she'achlu kadesh svia. Then he says the one who ate a kazait can even fulfill the obligation of the ones who ate for satiation. So I'll explain to you what this means, right? We already mentioned this right in the past that according to the Torah, when are you obligated to Birkat Hamazon? When you're satiated, because the pasuk says, right, "Ve'achalta v'savarta u'verachta et Adonai Elohecha." So that means you should eat and be satiated, and then you bless. That's what it says in the pasuk. But then what happened was, right, that they took on, as a stringency, the Jews, to even do Birkat Hamazon when they're eating a kazait. But that's only rabbinical. That's not from the Torah. So now the thing is, if you have a group of people, right, and some ate to satiation, and some just ate enough, right, to for kazait, to say Birkat Hamazon. So can the one who ate kazait fulfill the obligation of the ones who ate to satiation? So according to the first opinion, right, this cannot be done because here the obligation is rabbinical. Here the obligation is from the Torah. That's not the same thing. Who says that? Bahag, right? Who's Bahag? Halachot Gedolot, right? That's the name of his book. What's the rabbi's name? Rabbi Yudai Gaon.
Rabbi, can you repeat that again? I apologize.
Well, you want to know the name, right?
About the kasai, if one eats a kasai and the other one's just...
Right, so the thing is that if one eats a kazait and one is satiated, so one is obligated from the Torah, one is obligated from the rabbis. So comes the Bahag and says, the one who's obligated from the rabbis cannot fulfill the obligation of the one who's obligated from the Torah, since his obligation is higher, higher level.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So, but then comes the Re and says, no, you can't do that. Okay. Especially when in time of need. That's very interesting. So let's see how he brings this down a bit, Yosef. So he says, "Ken katav Rosh b'perek shlosha she'achlu." The Rosh also says like the Bahag. וזה לשנו, כתב בהג דמי שאכל כזית דגן, אינו מוציא אלא אותם שאכלו שיעורה דרבנן. ולתא דהה ינאי וחבריו. So the Rosh says, he doesn't agree with the Bahag. So apparently he agrees with the, what was that? I'll go back there and check. The Re, okay, the Re, yes. The Re, okay, so we have Bahag and Re. So Rosh seems to go with the Re. Then he goes on to say, דלתא בהד ינאי וחבריו אכלו כדי שביעה וילכו לעלמא לא אכל שמעון בן שטח כזית היה מוציא. So he says, we learn from this story in the Gemara, with Shimon ben Shetach and the rabbis, they had some kind of meal together. We learn from there that it's possible to do that. You don't have to be stringent about that. אף על פי שהם אכלו שיעורה דאורייתא, even though right, they were satiated and he was not, והוא לא אכל אלא שיעורה דרבנן. And he fulfilled the obligation, even though he was not really satiated. Motzi mishum dafilu lo achal klal says he does fulfill his obligation. Why? Because even if he didn't eat it all, yachol liot siyan kedei amrin and pek rau bedin. Look what he's saying. It's interesting, right? So he says even if he wouldn't eat it all, he could still fulfill the obligation. In other words, he's going to say it like as a surrogate for them, to do them a favor if they don't have to read whatever. So So the rule is, right, you can do full obligation of others with Birkat Hamazon, even though you yourself don't need it now. Except the bread and for the bread and the wine. Why is that? All the Jews are responsible for each other, right? So since that's the case, that's why you can do Birkat Hamazon for somebody else, even though you yourself didn't eat. But it says when it comes to right eating bread or wine, since you have to eat it and get pleasure from it, right, to enjoy it, right, mina olam hazeh v'asur lianot mina olam hazeh belo bracha. So you cannot right benefit from something in this world without a blessing. Eno motzi ela im ken tzarich la levarech. So then he has to actually taste it himself, Otherwise, how is he going to fulfill obligation? Right, when it comes to these blessings. About kiddush u'berkat matzah, but he says when it comes to kiddush and blessing of the matzah, shenam ela mitzvah, they're just a mitzvah, motzi, then he does full obligation. Even though he already did full obligation himself long before. Birkat Hamazon, same thing with Birkat Hamazon. You don't need kazait of grain or whatever, bread. Right? Unless you want to say she'achalnu, we ate. But the full obligation, Birkat Hamazon, שנתחייבו מן התורה, their obligation from the Torah, יכול להוציאם, you can fulfill obligation, אפילו בלא אכילה, even without eating. אבל בירושלמי, פרק מי שמת טוב, but it says ירושלמי, גרסינן כל מצווה שאדם פטור בהם, it says there, right, that where any mitzvah that a person is absolved, מוציא את הרבים, you can fulfill obligation of the others, חוץ מברכת המזון, except ברכת המזון, wow. והתנינן, כל שאינו חייב בדבר, but then we learn, right, that whoever is not obligated in something, אינו מוציא את הרבים ידי חובתן, he cannot fulfill the obligation of the public in their obligation. והחייב מוציא, right, so if he is obligated, then he does fulfill the obligation. אמר רבי אלי, shani ברכת המזון, it says Birkat Hamazon is different. Why? Because it says regarding that, it says you should eat. And you should bless, right? In other words, you have to eat also. It's one of the obligations of Birkat Hamazon. Only some person who ate can bless. But it says it could be that this is rabbinical. So he says the verse may be just a support for the rabbinical edict. And it's the best way to do the mitzvah. If they all know how to bless, that the one who ate the right kedesvia, the satiation should bless. But if they don't know how to bless, then the one who did the kazait can also fulfill their obligation, even the ones who ate for satiation. So the Rosh is lenient about this, like the Ri, basically. He goes like the Ri. V'gam Tosfot v'Rashba, also Tosfot and Rashba, Tachud divrei Bahag. They also don't agree with Bahag. So the Bahag seems to be alone here against all the Rishonim, right? Who don't seem to agree with him. So they concluded, right, that it's possible to do it this way, right? In other words, the person who ate kazait can fulfill the obligation of the one who ate satiation. So Rabbi Yonah brought both opinions, he says, but he didn't paskin. So he says the Rambam seems to go like the Bahag. Oh. This is also the tshuva they wrote to the rabbis of Luni. It seems to go like that as well. When he heard that lo amar bahag she'im lo achal ela kazait, he says it seems like the Rab Bahag only said that if he didn't eat kazait, only kazait, ela motzi mi she'achal eno motzi. There doesn't feel obligation to one who ate the satiation kedesvia. Ela kashe'acharim yotzim birkato. That's only when others are fulfilling an obligation with his blessing. Shilzeh with this one. Aval im enam. Yotzim birkato shilzeh. But if they're not fulfilling obligation with the blessing of this one, rather each one is blessing for himself. If he's saying zimun, that's not a problem. So in other words, we don't care about zimun. He can say the zimun if he wants, right? The only thing we care about is just that he shouldn't do a Birkat Hamazon for the people who are satiated. Im isha o katan motziin et charim yidei chobatan. What about, right, now we have the other question, right? We already spoke about this, right? What about a woman or a katan, right, a child? Could they fulfill the obligation of others, right, of the men? Birkat Hamazon. Katav Rabbeinu b'Sabian Kuf Pei Vav. So we already said, right, in chapter 186, we paskined over there about that, right? Katav Mordechai Perek Shlosha Shechlu. So says the Mordechai, in the Perek Shlosha Shechlu, that in Brachot, B'Shem Sefer Yerim, name of this book, Acharei D'Kaim Alan Rabbi Meir. It says, since we don't like Rabbi Meir, they're not Kazait Deoraita. The Kazait is Deoraita from the Torah, the size Kazait. In Ken Kaim Alan, the Sabata Zo Shtiyat In Ken Lo Michayev B'Deoraita Ela In Ken Shata. So it says, then, right, when it says you should be satiated, it means you should drink. And if so, right, it's not obligated from the Torah unless he drank. Im hu tzarich lishtot, if he drinks, he needs to drink. But if he doesn't need to drink, lo amra Torah sheishteh, then the Torah didn't tell you to drink. The tiavon, only if you desire it. V'yukach mi she'achal v'lo shata, therefore, even a person ate and didn't drink, lo matzeh le'otzi acharim yedei chovatan, he cannot fulfill the obligation of others. Shachlu v'shatu, that they ate and drank, the lo atid the rabbanan or mapik derotai. Why? Because rabbinical obligation cannot fulfill the obligation of the Torah. That's the end of it. It seems to be a minority opinion here, not really halacha, but we'll see. V'chen katav kolbo. That's what it says in the kolbo. B'shibur alekat be'eno nachon. It says not correct in my eyes. It says be'enai. Shari katuva tosot berk shlosha shachlu. Because it says in tosot the karaya asmachta be'alma. These verses are just support, right? But these things are rabbinical, these obligations. They brought some sources for this. The kara lav asmachtahu. Even according to one who holds that this verse is not a support rabbinically, just from the Torah actually. Rather, kazait is really from the Torah. It's about azol shtia, and the satiation is talking about drinking. So then, how does he know that the blessing of eating is talia b'shtia, that it depends on drinking? Dilma hachi kamar ka. Maybe the verse said like this: "Keshetochal or keshetishte." When you eat or when you drink, then you should bless the Lord your God. V'chen gadat kol haposkim. So all poskim all seem to hold. Should look katvu svara zo. They only wrote this opinion. De'achin aktinan, de'achal lo shata. So therefore, we paskin, right, if he ate and didn't drink, even though he was thirsty to drink, he can fulfill the obligation of others. Im ger yachol leotzia acherim yedei chovatam b'Birkat Hamazon, katav Rabbeinu b'siman kuf tzadik tet. Right. So okay. So basically, right. Done with this. So I guess we'll just see the Shulchan Aruch and we'll finish. We're running a little bit late, but it's okay. You don't lose with Torah. You never lose with Torah. Okay, so if it's not too big, I'll read it now. If it's too big, I'll read it next time. Right, so it says Shulchan Aruch like this. Right, let's say you have a group, ate together. Like some of them ate satiation. Some of them only ate kazait. Right? So some is rabbinical, some is from the Torah. So then, if everybody knows how to bless, right? Anybody should, right? Then the mitzvah is that the one who was satiated should bless for the others, right? He should be the one who does it, right? The zimun and the Birkat Hamazon. If they don't know all how to bless, so then, right, the one who ate a kazait can fulfill the obligation of the others. So you see, right, that he paskins pretty much like the Rosh, more or less. So says Rama, some say, as we said, right, you're not obligated to bless from the Torah unless you didn't drink. The old type then he's thirsty to drink. But so he says, therefore, it's good, to be careful, the chatchila, If some of them drank, if some of them didn't drink, therefore it's better that if the one who drank should, right, bless for everybody. Okay, that's just stringency, but that's not really halacha. But anyway, right? So just to wrap it up, right? To summarize, what are we saying over here? That if you have some people who ate satiation, some people ate just kazait, so then it's better, right? That the one who was satiated should bless for the others, But if they don't have that situation, right? We don't have that scenario. So then even the one who ate a kazait can bless for the others.
And that's because the kasai is rabbinical and the satiation is
Right.
okay.
But we're relying on that what the Rosh said, right? Which is that he said that even somebody who didn't eat, can really, fulfill obligation. And I mean, so all the more so somebody who ate. But there's a machloket about that, so therefore, if we can, we prefer to avoid this machloket. So the one who's satiated should, better off if he blesses. Okay, Chazak Baruch Laila Tov. Thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. We'll see you tomorrow, Be'ez Hashem, and Laila Tov. Chazak Baruch.
Thank you for class. Bye bye.
God
Wonderful.
bless.
Thank you so much.
All the best.